It was supposed to be just another Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, tense, partisan, but predictable. Cameras rolled, aides shifted nervously, and viewers across America tuned into what was billed as a routine discussion on judicial ethics. But this one had a twist. Chief Justice John Roberts had agreed, for the first time in over a decade, to appear live. At the center of the broadcast sat Roberts, usually composed and guarded, but on this day visibly rattled. To his left was Senator Jasmine Crockett of Texas, known for her sharp questioning and refusal to be intimidated by power. The moment the gavel struck, something in the air shifted. Roberts opened with a statement. His tone was unusually defensive. "Let me be clear," he said, adjusting his glasses, "the integrity of this court has never been compromised." Crockett barely blinked. She leaned forward slightly, pen poised. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every flicker of tension. "Chief Justice," she said smoothly, "you've presided over some of the most ethically questionable years in the court's history. Are you ready to answer for that?" A low gasp rippled through the room. Roberts' jaw tightened. This wasn't going to be a routine hearing. The silence after Crockett's question lingered like a storm cloud. Roberts stared at her, stunned for a moment that anyone, let alone a sitting member of Congress, would challenge him so bluntly on live television. "Senator Crockett," he began, voice strained but icy, "I will not allow this hearing to turn into a partisan inquisition." Crockett didn't flinch. "With all due respect, Chief Justice, this isn't about partisanship. It's about accountability. And the American people are watching." The camera cut to the gallery. Staffers looked stunned. Journalists whispered furiously into their phones. Roberts shifted in his seat, lips thinning. "You're insinuating that the court lacks integrity, based on media headlines and political pressure." Crockett raised a brow. "No, sir. I'm referring to documented conflicts of interest, unexplained luxury trips, and a pattern of silence when the court's credibility was on the line." Roberts' hands gripped the desk. His voice rose, sharper now, "This is outrageous. You're grandstanding." And there it was, the moment. Crockett's eyes narrowed. She didn't speak. She let the silence do the work this time. The air grew heavy. Millions of viewers leaned in. Finally, she said quietly, "Outrageous is watching justice erode while you call it tradition." Gasps filled the chamber. A senator to the right of Roberts shifted uncomfortably. The live feed showed the Chief Justice's face draining of color. And Crockett wasn't finished yet. Chief Justice Roberts looked like he'd been struck. For a man known for careful words and deliberate calm, his expression betrayed something deeper now, indignation, and perhaps, fear. He leaned forward, speaking directly into the microphone with a tremble of anger. "I have spent decades defending the Constitution. I will not sit here and be accused, on national television, of betraying it." Crockett's reply came like a blade through fog. "Then defend it, sir. But don't mistake silence for dignity and secrecy for honor." The room fell into a stunned hush. Behind her, aides exchanged wide-eyed glances. Even the usually stone-faced committee chair looked uncertain how to proceed. Roberts attempted to pivot. "The Supreme Court is not a political tool to be weaponized. And I refuse to be interrogated like a criminal," but Crockett cut in, calm, icy, surgical. "No one's accusing you of being a criminal, Chief Justice. Not yet." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Somewhere in the room, a cough broke the silence. The phrase was already trending on social media. News anchors scrambled to reframe their evening segments. Roberts froze. His next words came lower, tighter. "Are you threatening me, Senator?" Crockett folded her hands slowly. "No. But I am warning the nation. If the highest court in the land believes it's above scrutiny, we've already lost the republic." And with that, the room erupted, not in noise, but in sheer, deafening tension. The Chief Justice's composure, so famously unshakable, was unraveling. You could see it in the way he gripped the armrest. In the way he avoided the camera now. In the shallow breaths he tried to hide. Senator Jasmine Crockett, however, was gaining momentum. Her voice never rose. It didn't need to. Her words had weight, and the nation could feel them drop, one after another. Chief Justice, she said, tapping her fingers against her notes, you lecture on constitutional duty, yet for years, the court has refused to adopt the very code of ethics binding every other branch. Roberts opened his mouth, then closed it again. You've ruled on cases involving friends, donors, and undisclosed connections, she continued. How do you justify that to the American people? Those claims are politically motivated, Roberts snapped. There is no legal mandate requiring us to, no legal mandate. Crockett interrupted. Is that how low the bar has fallen? You require a law to tell you not to accept private jets from billionaires with business before your court. A sharp murmur moved through the hearing room. Roberts turned to the committee chair, visibly agitated. Mr. Chairman, I must protest this line of questioning. But the chair, cautious, aware of the cameras, only raised a hand and said softly, you agreed to answer questions, Chief Justice. The senator has the floor. Crockett locked eyes with Roberts. This isn't about politics, sir. It's about trust. And right now, the court is running on fumes. Roberts had no reply. Not one that would save him. And outside the Capitol, headlines were already forming. The Chief Justice sat frozen, surrounded by microphones, senators, and a nation watching his silence speak louder than any ruling had ever written. Jasmine Crockett leaned back for the first time, letting the weight of her words settle like dust on a courtroom bench. She wasn't there to yell, she was there to dismantle. Let me ask one final question, Chief Justice, she said evenly. Can you look into that camera, and tell the American people, under oath, that no justice on your court has ever been influenced by gifts, political agendas, or hidden alliances? Roberts straightened, his jaw clenching. Senator, this hearing has become a circus, he said bitterly. No, Crockett replied, this hearing is a mirror. And maybe the reflection's what you don't like. The room tightened again. No laughter. No gasps. Just silence. Roberts looked toward the back of the chamber. His aides refused to meet his gaze. Even fellow conservatives seemed uneasy. Then came his mistake. You're playing with fire, he muttered into the mic, unaware it picked up every syllable. Crockett didn't blink. The fire was already lit, Chief Justice. I'm just making sure the people can see where the smoke is coming from. And at that moment, across every social feed, a single clip was replayed over and over, the most powerful judge in the country, losing control, while a freshman senator carved through him without raising her voice. By now, the Capitol hearing room felt less like a government chamber and more like a courtroom with the roles reversed, Chief Justice Roberts on the figurative witness stand, and Jasmine Crockett wielding truth like a cross-examination. The chairman cleared his throat, hesitant. Chief Justice Roberts, you may respond. Roberts didn't speak right away. He adjusted his notes, tapped his pen, stared into the camera. Then, in a flat tone, this is an ambush. I agreed to appear in good faith, and instead I've been subjected to public humiliation. Crockett tilted her head slightly, as if the words themselves bored her. Good faith would have been transparency 10 years ago, she said. Today's just reality catching up. That line landed hard. C-SPAN's feed jumped to a split screen, Roberts staring downward, Crockett composed and unblinking. The contrast was cinematic. And it was viral. Then she added, as if sealing a verdict, you came here expecting deference, not questions. That tells us everything. Roberts finally snapped, I have given my life to the law. Without missing a beat, Crockett delivered the line that would dominate headlines for days, then maybe it's time the law gave something back. A collective stillness followed. It wasn't just that she had landed a rhetorical blow, it was that it felt earned. Her tone wasn't vindictive. It was exhausted. Reflective of a nation weary of double standards cloaked in robes. And the damage, to Roberts, to the mystique of the court, was already done. Outside the chamber, chaos had already begun to ripple. Networks broke into regular programming. Analysts spoke in hushed, urgent tones. Headlines updated in real time: Crockett confronts Roberts, court's credibility in crisis, Chief Justice implodes on live TV, maybe it's time the law gave something back. Crockett's line echoes nationwide. Back inside the room, Roberts leaned away from the mic, visibly shaken. His face, flushed with frustration, no longer carried the authoritative calm Americans were used to. Instead, he looked like a man out of place in his own narrative. Crockett gathered her notes slowly, methodically. She hadn't moved in haste once. Her control had been deliberate, almost surgical. "I yield my time," she said quietly, placing her pen down. The chair nodded but didn't speak. No one did. Then a senior senator broke the silence with a forced cough. "Chief Justice, you're welcome to respond or clarify." But Roberts waved the comment away, voice low and bitter, "There's nothing to clarify. The damage is done." That, too, was caught on mic. Reporters outside the chamber scrambled, some openly stunned by the admission. A few stared into their phones in disbelief. Even veteran correspondents whispered, "Did he just say that?" Crockett stood, nodding respectfully, not arrogantly, before walking out of the chamber without looking back. It wasn't just a moment. It was a shift. A reordering of power. A televised reckoning. And it wasn't over yet. By the time Jasmine Crockett reached the Capitol steps, her phone had exploded with calls and texts, from colleagues, reporters, even celebrities. But she ignored them all. She knew the hearing had struck a nerve. She just didn't yet realize how deep it had cut. Inside the chamber, Roberts remained seated, surrounded by silence. No one approached him. No one came to his defense. The shield of judicial reverence had cracked, and the world had seen the fracture live. News anchors tried to keep up. "This wasn't just a disagreement," one said on MSNBC. "This was an indictment, moral, ethical, and historic." Justice Roberts appeared completely unprepared, a Fox News commentator admitted. Senator Crockett, whether you agree with her or not, delivered a masterclass in controlled accountability. Back in Texas, watch parties erupted in cheers. On social media, the hashtags #Crockett Effect and #Roberts Meltdown trended worldwide. Clips of the exchange circulated faster than anyone expected. The most shared moment? That single line, "Maybe it's time the law gave something back." Commentators and scholars debated its meaning. Activists adopted it. And Roberts? He reportedly left through a side entrance, shielded by staff, avoiding cameras altogether. Later that evening, Senator Crockett released a simple statement: "I didn't go to that hearing to perform. I went to remind those in power that justice is not a privilege, it's a duty. And no robe, title, or legacy should ever place anyone beyond its reach." The message was clear: this wasn't personal. It was structural. Intentional. And far from finished. That night, behind closed doors in Washington, panic brewed. In a private meeting at the Supreme Court building, senior justices reportedly confronted Roberts. The conservative bloc was furious, not just at the optics, but at the vulnerability he had exposed. "You should have never agreed to that hearing," one justice reportedly said. "You let her dictate the narrative," another snapped. But Roberts didn't argue. He sat, silent, clutching a glass of water, the same tension still etched on his face. He knew what they didn't want to admit: the damage wasn't Crockett's doing, it was years in the making. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, Crockett was pulled into a flurry of meetings. Democratic leadership congratulated her. Progressive coalitions began drafting ethics reform proposals using clips from the hearing as a rallying cry. One staffer told her, "You did in 15 minutes what hearings have failed to do in 15 years." But Crockett remained calm. "This wasn't about taking him down," she said. "It was about lifting the curtain." That same evening, an emergency PR strategy session was held at the Federalist Society. Conservative think tanks scrambled to shift the narrative, but it was too late. Even some traditional allies of the court began calling for reforms. One headline from The Atlantic captured the shift perfectly: "Jasmine Crockett just changed the tone of judicial accountability in America, and still, Roberts said nothing." Not in a press release. Not in a statement. Not even through a spokesperson. He had lost the floor, and the country knew it. Morning news cycles opened with only one story. From breakfast tables in Georgia to studios in Manhattan, Americans replayed the moment over coffee and disbelief. Roberts' face, once the epitome of calm jurisprudence, now looked like the symbol of institutional fragility. Crockett's line was already etched into political lore. Students in law schools were debating it. Protest signs were quoting it. Maybe it's time the law gave something back. Meanwhile, Crockett declined every major interview request. CNN, NBC, The View, they all called. She declined. When a reporter caught her briefly in a hallway and asked how she felt about the public reaction, she simply said, "The work isn't done." In contrast, silence from the court became deafening. Rumors swirled that Roberts had offered to issue a clarification, possibly even an apology, but had been advised against it. The court didn't apologize. It endured. That had always been the model. But not anymore. A growing number of senators, Republicans included, began quietly discussing the possibility of a binding judicial ethics code. Civic groups launched petitions. Some even called for hearings into prior recusals and hidden financial ties. Roberts' defenders, thin as they were, pleaded for context. It was emotional, they said. The pressure got to him. But Crockett's defenders had a simpler reply: if pressure from questions breaks a Chief Justice, how can we trust him to withstand pressure from billionaires? And that question, no one could answer. By the end of the week, the Capitol was buzzing like a hive. Every hallway conversation, every closed-door meeting, every cable panel circled back to one thing: Roberts. Editorials came from all sides. The New York Times published a scathing op-ed titled "The Fragility of Power," while even the Wall Street Journal admitted the hearing had fundamentally shifted the public's view of judicial immunity. Polls confirmed it: public trust in the Supreme Court had dropped 10 points in 4 days. Inside the Senate, reform talk accelerated. A bipartisan draft proposal quietly circulated, titled, "The Judicial Integrity and Transparency Act." At the top of the co-sponsors list was Jasmine Crockett. Behind the scenes, pressure mounted on Roberts to make some kind of move: a press conference, a letter, even a carefully worded video. But every option risked compounding the disaster. There was no way to explain away what had happened without either lying, or admitting too much. Meanwhile, Crockett finally agreed to one interview, on PBS, seated in a modest studio, no cheering crowds, no flashy graphics. "This isn't about a soundbite," she said, calmly. "It's about whether justice is still blind, or just looking the other way." When asked if she feared backlash, she smiled faintly. "Truth makes people uncomfortable. But I'd rather speak it than sit in silence and call it tradition." Clips from the interview went viral again. Crockett wasn't just a rising figure, she was now being called the conscience of Congress. And Roberts? Still silent. Still hiding behind the same marble walls he once believed untouchable. 2 weeks later, America was still talking. Protests began forming outside the Supreme Court, not angry mobs, but quiet, coordinated vigils. Law students in robes held candles. Retired judges made rare appearances, some holding signs that read, "Integrity is not optional. No one is above scrutiny." Inside the Capitol, momentum finally crystallized. The Judiciary Committee voted unanimously, yes, unanimously, to advance the Judicial Integrity and Transparency Act. A stunned nation watched as senators from both parties admitted, on camera, that the court could no longer govern itself without oversight. Chief Justice Roberts issued a statement at last. 3 paragraphs. Cold. Carefully worded. But one line stood out: while I maintain the independence of the judiciary must be protected, I now recognize that transparency may serve that independence rather than threaten it. It wasn't an apology. But it was the closest thing to an admission the court had ever offered. And as the Senate chamber prepared for the vote, Jasmine Crockett stood once more, this time not in confrontation, but in closure. This isn't about one man, or one moment, she said. It's about generations who believed justice was real. And it's about making sure the next generation never has to wonder. The gallery stood. Some clapped. Some cried. And outside, in the cool D.C. air, a new headline lit up phones across the country: Crockett Stand Forces Historic Reform, a new era of justice begins. A quiet revolution had unfolded, broadcast live, etched into history, and it began with one voice refusing to be silenced.